Good morning, guys. Hope everyone's having an awesome day today. I have had an absolutely insane morning. I'm just getting back home. I still got a bunch of stuff to do. I have been planning this video for a while, and I don't want to keep putting it off because I know in summer I'm not going to have as much time to record and upload for you guys. So with that being said, today we are going to talk about the 7th generation in consoles. And in my opinion, this was my favorite console generation. And I honestly believe this was the best generation of consoles to ever come out. That's my opinion. And I have my own reasons for this. I think it was just a great time for me as a gamer. The Xbox 360, from start to finish, I played so much of that. I played a little bit of PS3 and Wii and that as well. The Wii had its staple titles, the Marios. PS3 had its exclusives, God of Wars and such. And then, the Xbox had Gears and Halo and stuff like that. And just all around, this was a great time to be a gamer, guys. The consoles themselves were all really good. They all had their pros and cons, of course, like everything does. It's a short list. It's a list of the big three, as I would call it. And I'm going to grade each one of these. I'm going to tell you what my favorite is, what my least favorite is. We're going to go over all of this. We're going to get right into it. Stick around. So for me, I'm going to say in third place in this console generation is probably the PlayStation 3. The main reasons I would say this is in third place, Xbox got the jump on Sony and Nintendo in this generation. They came out about a year before the other two. And this didn't really affect Nintendo too much because, in all honesty, Nintendo doesn't compete with Sony and Microsoft. Nintendo has its own audience. They're always going to be that audience. They're not going to deviate away from that. They have a certain sect that they appeal to. It's a broad range, very child friendly, very party, fun games, family orientated consoles. So really, the fact that Microsoft got the jump on them early didn't particularly affect Nintendo in this case, but it did affect Sony because to me, Sony and Microsoft are always competing for the same core audience. And Microsoft coming out a year early, and that really did knock the PlayStation back. One of the benefits of the PlayStation, however, it did come with a Blu-ray disc drive, and obviously Blu-ray won the war from Xbox's HD DVD and the dual layer DVD and stuff like that. So Blu-ray is kind of the king in that aspect, guys. But for me, the PlayStation 3 came out a year later, and the options that came out on it, the 20 gig and the 60 gig hard drives initially, they were more expensive than the Xbox offerings. Now, Xbox came out with a core model that you could put a little USB in or whatever, and then they also had a 20 gig. But the PlayStation 3 20 gig model was $100 more than the Xbox 360 model at the time. And this also was detrimental to Sony. Now, don't get me wrong, Sony and Microsoft were pretty even in sales, guys. But for Sony's original position, having the PlayStation 2, at 160 million units sold and then going down to basically half, this really knocked them down. However, they still sold 87 million units. Still successful, guys. And Sony did really have a decent amount of exclusive titles here, guys. From the Gran Turismos to the Uncharted's. God of War is a staple on the machine. I believe Metal Gear was still exclusive at this time as well. The Little Big Planet and the Resistance Fall of Man and all this stuff was really cool. Stuff like Killzone. They had a lot of exclusive titles. It was helpful with them in their market share. They had an awesome library of games for this, guys. Don't kid yourself. The PlayStation 3 is still a good console, guys. They came out with the original FAT, and if you're lucky to get one of the original ones with the 4-port, those ones were the backwards compatible ones, so I like what they did with that. And then they came out with the Slims and the Super Slims, and they had a bunch of offshoots. I know there's a Red God of War Super Slim, and they had a bunch of different bundles for these, like all the makers did, of course. That's how they market their games. And the game library for the PS3 was good. 2,400 games, give or take. So a huge library. And I will say one thing about the PS3. You can acquire cheap games for this generation in general. The PS3 has a ton of cheap games that are really good still, guys. But it just could not compete with Nintendo and Microsoft. And that is my opinion. And that's why I ranked the PlayStation 3 at number 3. All right, guys, and that being said, number two on my list is the good old Nintendo Wii. Now, as I said before, Nintendo does their own thing when it comes to console and game marketing. They have always been a very kid-friendly platform. And the way they marketed the Wii was children, family playing together, having fun. So I got where Nintendo was coming from this. They wanted to bring everyone under this umbrella that families could play on this. It was really fun. The hardware itself, Nintendo is usually behind a gen or two, I would say, on this stuff. The Wii was no different. When you compare the Wii to the PS3 and the Xbox 360, there's no comparison graphically. It definitely looks basically like a up-res GameCube at the most. I will say the Wii came out. Most of them were backwards compatible from what I can tell, the original white ones. The ones with the 4 ports are the ones that are backwards compatible, guys. Those are the ones you want to keep an eye out if you're buying one for yourself, because then you can play your GameCube games on it as well. Now, this console sold just over 100 million units. It was the best-selling console of this generation. Very successful for Nintendo. I remember when this came out, the hype for this was pretty pumped. The Nintendo people loved it, and everyone in general. One upside to this console is that they do use them in old age care homes and in physical rehabilitation and stuff to keep people moving, like, Wii bowling or even the SOAR games, just to move your arms and, have body movements, even if you're chair bound. Very good tool for that. Really cool, honestly. Now, this console was the cheapest, and it came in around $250 when it was released. So, economically, good price, family friendly. By the end of its life cycle, it had about 1,600 games in the library. Now, I will say about the Wii, a lot of the games are very shovelware, just cheap, crappy type games. They really did put a glut of games on this that were not very good. However, they had the staples. You have your Super Mario Bros. Wii, Mario Kart. Those are both hugely popular. There's the Zelda games. There's Silent Hills. There was a lot of good titles on this, but it did get overshadowed by a lot of the just really cartoony, crappy games that they put on it that were not visually appealing. But for kids, the very cartoony stuff like that, it doesn't really matter. It keeps them engaged. It keeps them moving their hands and, their hand-eye coordination. So in that aspect, it doesn't particularly matter that graphically this was inferior. That's not what they were going for in this console, and I think they really did achieve what they were setting out to do when they released this console, and that was set up the next few generations for this type of environment, to capture all the children, to capture the families, and keep growing on their family-friendly business. However, when the Wii U launched, it didn't quite live up to the expectations, but I will say now that the Switches came out, blew it out of the water. So they took their lumps on the Wii U, but this precursor to the Wii U and Switch, definitely a good console. If you got kids, it's still a fun console to play, guys. I would suggest picking it up. You can pick these up used for $40 or $50. Even less than that on Marketplace most of the time with a stack of games. If you want one in the box, you can probably even get it for 60 or 70 bucks and have a nice new looking one. I've played this quite a bit. It is a fun console. Again, it was late to the party like the PS3. That's why I ranked it at number 2. But it is a really solid number 2, guys. Awesome little console, Nintendo Wii. So, if you guys have made it this far in the video, you obviously know who the winner is. And if you're a regular on the channel, you'll also know who the winner is. This console, in my opinion, is the best console of all time in the best generation of gaming of all time. I'll give you a few of the reasons why I picked this. Number 1, if you're a Call of Duty fan, the Xbox 360 had exclusivity on the Call of Duty franchise for early release content. And it also was the platform used in MLG gaming. So anyone that was a huge Call of Duty fan would want the Xbox 360. There's one factor for me that made this the best console. The content came out early. All the MLG players were playing it. Not that I wanted to be MLG, but if you enjoyed watching that stuff, and they were playing on that platform, that's probably the platform you wanted to play on. Number 2 for me Definitely the controller. I have always liked the Xbox controllers better than the PlayStation ones. The PlayStation ones feel too small, and I don't like that the thumbsticks are the same. I like them offset. I've always been an Xbox controller guy from the original Xbox to the 360, to the One, to the Series X. All of them are just, in my opinion, a better designed controller. And in my opinion, the Xbox 360 controller is the best designed controller of all time. It's the best feeling controller. Microsoft's wireless technology just always worked really well. It didn't rely on Bluetooth. There was no chance of interfering signals on the 360. That, in my opinion, was superior to anything Nintendo or Sony ever made, and probably ever has made. I do like the Series X controller and the Xbox One controllers. They are good too, but a 360 controller for me just feels right, guys. Smartly came out before the PS3 and the Nintendo Wii. Now, it didn't matter so much with the Wii. Nintendo's hardcore fans follow it no matter what. But getting that year head start on PS3 really helped them. Now, the sales were pretty even between two consoles. I think Microsoft was around 84 million and 87 million on the PS3. One detriment to the Xbox 360, as everyone knows, is the dreaded 3 red ring of death. I'm sure anyone that owned one of these consoles experienced this probably more than once. I know I did. I bought a console for my brother. It barfed out 3 times, I think. But Microsoft stepped up to the plate. When these failed, you would literally send it into them, and within like a week, they would send you a refurbed unit. And if it happened, they would keep doing it. And they kept extending the warranty, and I think it went to like 3 years out or something like that. So in my opinion, they probably took a huge loss on the original consoles by doing this. But they didn't wait to repair your console. They would simply send you another one. So I have to give Microsoft kudos for that. Even though the consoles were faulty, they would simply just replace them, guys. And yeah, it would suck waiting that week or two for a new console, but you knew they were going to come through and get you one. And another little detriment to the Xbox 360, they tried to stick it out with the HD DVDs and, dual layer DVDs, and it just didn't end up winning that optical race. But again, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, gamers are buying these to game on them, so no matter what kind of disc they're coming on, they really don't care. One benefit the 360 had over the PS3 is loading times. Blu-ray is awesome for storage. It's not the best for loading. You put a game disc in the PS3, you have to wait for it to install and then play, and it's really quite annoying. The 360, you throw that game in it, you're playing. And that was one of the huge advantages to sticking with the dual layer DVD. And I believe that's part of the reason Microsoft tried to stay with it. Now, Microsoft focused on gaming, and this is what really, in my opinion, won them this generation's console war. And it's very unfortunate that they didn't keep going with this with the Xbox One. I really don't understand what they were going with that. They tried to compete with, TV providers and all this bull, and then putting the motion camera on it and trying to run with that, and it just did not work. The 360 was for gamers, and that's why it won, guys. The game library on this, over 2,000 games, freaking awesome, dude. Like Forza, you had Gears of War, you had Halo, and of course you had all the Bethesda games. Ton of exclusives, a ton of games that were multi-platform. Unless you were a diehard God of War or wanted Uncharted or something like that, then this, in my opinion, of this generation was the console for you. The Halo franchise and Gears of War, I think there's at least 2 or 3 iterations of each game on each. And I remember playing like Mass Effect on this and Minecraft, and there was so many good games. And in my opinion, this console has the best game library of all time. I don't know if they'll ever top it, honestly. And even to me, Call of Duty was at its peak this time, Black Ops, Call of Duty 4, World at War. Like, those 3 are the best Call of Duties in my opinion. Just shaped the way I am as a gamer and the games I love today. Honestly, if I could only have one console and the game specific to that console, not taking into account backwards compatibility and all this stuff, the Xbox 360, hands down, would be the console I would pick every single time. I just love this console. As I say, guys, I'm a Microsoft guy. I appreciate the Sony games and Nintendo and all the other ones, Sega. But at the end of the day, this console is the big daddy of them all. I doubt I will ever change my opinion. And I would really appreciate, let me know in the comments what your opinions are and what your favorite console is, and let me know why. I really appreciate to hear that. I gotta cut the damn grass. I got lawyers calling me a bit of property. I will see you guys on the next one. I really appreciate you sticking around, and you know what? I don't care what you say, the Xbox 360 is the best. All jokes aside, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.